When I was in year 6, I faked being sick and it may have been the best decision I've ever made. On that day pretending to be sick, I found the best show ever made and I watched the whole season in one day. The creators of this show, Matt and Ross, the Duffer Brothers, they started writing this show in 2011 and they started casting for it in 2015. I would also like to note, by the time that they started casting this show, they knew everything that was going to happen. Everything in the show is on purpose. Matt and Ross knew what they were doing the whole time and everything is intentional. These videos are heavily inspired by Mike's Mike and his whole Pretty Little Liars series and Glee series. He's amazing. I love him. He is truly my inspiration. I also just like TV and movies and I could talk about them for so long. So why not do my first YouTube video on my favorite TV show? This video will go over the plot of season 1 and 2. And then the next video that I do will go over the plot of season 3 and 4. Then when season 5 comes out, the whole entirety of the show, I will do a final last recap on season 5. This is my board. It will majoritively stay the same, but it will differ from season to season because other people get introduced and other people become more important than others. Now you may be wondering, what's going on up here? These are the big bads of each season. I'm only adding people to the board if they have a specific impact on the plot, okay? There are a lot of side characters in the show. My board simply isn't that big. So I'm only adding the people that have an overall impact on the plot of the show. You also need to know about D&D. D&D, or Dungeons & Dragons, is a role-playing game that basically just tells a story in an imaginary world. One person, the DM, or Dungeon Master, narrates the full story while the other players in the party, that's what they call the group playing the game, makes choices through their character that they've made up. That's also why the main four call themselves a party. They refer to themselves as a party quite often in the series, so that's why. It's honestly really cool how the Duffer Brothers use D&D through their storytelling of the show, even going as far as putting villains and monsters that are originally in D&D to be the monsters in the show. Chapter 1, The Vanishing of Will Byers. It's November 6, 1983, in a small town in Indiana named Hawkins. The first scene opens in a lab, more specifically, Hawkins National Laboratory, US Department of Energy. Now this is a very important place throughout the whole entire series, okay, so you need to remember it. Inside the lab, everything is flickering, alarms are going off, and we see a guy in a lab coat running through the hallways. He is running desperately, okay? This man is running away from someone, clearly. He gets into the elevator at the end of the hall, and he tries to press the button, but it doesn't go up. But when he looks up, and then he gets dragged up. Right. So that's the opening scene for the show. Me personally, I think that that's a pretty good opening scene. Then we switch to these 4 kids playing D&D. We get introduced to Mike Wheeler, Dustin Henderson, Lucas Sinclair, and Will Byers, okay? And right away, we hear Mike say, let me try and do an American accent, something is coming. Something hungry for blood. It's almost here. The Demogorgon. Everyone is waiting for Will to take his turn. We see that Dustin wants him to cast protection, but Lucas wants him to help out the party and cast a fireball. Will decides to cast a fireball, but when he rolls his dice to make his throw, he rolls it too hard and they all fly off the table. Then we hear Mike's mom calling for them to wrap this game up, okay? It's getting late. So Mike decides to go upstairs because they're in the basement of his house and try to plead with his mom that we've been planning this game for so long and it's been 12 hours straight. Just please let us finish. Will does find the dice on the floor and he rolled a 7. So that means it's a fail. But Lucas tells him that if Mike didn't see, it doesn't count. So shush. We also get introduced to Nancy, Mike's older sister. We find out that she used to be really cool, but then she started dating this Steve Harrington. I wonder who that could be. Anyway, everyone says bye because they need to get home, but Will decides to stay back a bit and tell Mike that he rolled a 7 and that the Demogorgon, it got him. and then he rides his bike away. But as he does this, the light above Mike starts to flicker, which could mean nothing. As Will, Dustin, and Lucas split up to go home, we see Will go into an area. This area is marked Restricted Area Property of Hawkins National Laboratory, U.S. Department of Energy. It starts to storm. The light on Will's bike flickers out and dies. He looks down to see his light. When he looks back up, he sees this. Obviously, he gets scared. He crashes his bike on the side of the road and he starts booking it to his house. Like, this man is running for his life. We can also hear the thing that he saw on the middle of the road start chasing him. He gets to his house. He's home alone. He tries to call the police, but he only hears this like weird static and gurgling sound. He gives up, okay? He goes to the shed, which the door is already open and the light is already on, but he's home alone. There's a shotgun on the table, okay? He starts loading that thing up. He's like this to the shed door, okay? Then the gurgling noise that he heard on the phone starts coming from behind him. And the light that was on dies out. And then it comes back on, and then he's gone. So we get introduced to Mike, Dustin, Will, and Lucas, okay? They were playing D&D, they went home, it starts to storm, Will crashes his bike, runs to his house, and disappears. In the morning, we're introduced to Jonathan. Jonathan, okay? Will's older brother. Then we also get introduced to Joyce, Will's mother. They're at the buyer's house and Joyce goes to wake Will up, but he's not in his bedroom like usual. She asked Jonathan what happened last night, but he says that he picked up an extra shift because he thought they could use the cash. He probably just slept at the Wheelers or something. So Joyce calls Karen, Mike's mum, but Will didn't sleep there last night. Mike, Dustin, and Lucas are at school wondering where Will is. Okay, they get bullied by these guys. Their teacher, Mr. Scott Clark, tells them that he got this new radio station, okay? It's super big, like so big that you could contact Australia. Australia mention. Says to meet him at the AV club after school so they can see it. At school, we also get introduced to Nancy's friend, Barb, okay? I forgot to print Barb's photo. Barb's actually really important to the plot. Okay, I printed out Barb's photo. This is Barb, okay? She's Nancy's best friend. We can clearly see that Nancy is sort of like this know-it-all, nerdy type character, okay? I don't really know how to explain her. We also get introduced to this Steve Harrington character, okay? On the board yet because he's not important to the plot yet, okay? Barb is straight up important to the plot, okay? Earlier we met this guy, Jim Hopper, asleep on the couch surrounded by like beers and pills and stuff. Right. Turns out he's the chief of police in Hawkins. Okay? When he turns up for work, late might I add, Joyce is there and says that she's been calling like 100 times and she's been waiting for him. Now Will is officially marked missing. Okay? Hopper is like, he might just be playing around, but Joyce says that he's not like that, okay? She says that he's a sensitive kid and that he gets made fun of all the time and bullied a lot for being so sensitive. Even his dad, Lorne, who's not in the picture anymore, thank God, used to call him gay as a nicer way of saying it, and also gave him a bit of a hard time. Okay. Hopper says that 99 times out of 100, the child is with a parent or a relative, but Joyce is just like, what about that 1% of the time? What about that one kid? That one kid, what happens to that one kid? He says that stuff like this doesn't happen in Hawkins. And we can from what we've seen so far, Hawkins is pretty much like the classic cliche small town, no scandals happen, nothing happens, okay? So when Will is marked missing, it scares a lot of people because something like this doesn't happen in such a tight-knit community. Now, back at the lab, the Hawkins light, whatever, we get introduced to Dr. Brenner. jump scare, okay? He's with a bunch of people in the hallway that we saw that scientist running down, okay? There are people putting on hazmat suits, getting guns. Guns! There are no lights on, no alarms or anything like that, like we saw before. But there's like these little things, like the best I could describe is like ash. There's like ash floating in the air, but it's not ash. Like there's no fire in sight, okay? A person in a hazmat suit says, "This is where it came from." Another says, "And the girl?" talking to Dr. Brenner, and he replies with, "She can't have gone far." He ain't British. He replies with, "She can't have gone far." Then we see this kid with buzzed hair, no shoes, and a hospital gown, just walking through the forest. She sees this guy coming from a restaurant, like sort of like a rundown diner type deal, and he's taking out the rubbish, and she quietly sneaks in, okay? He has no idea she's there. While the guy she saw taking out the rubbish is talking to the customers at the front of the house, she's in the kitchen, like, scarfing down food, okay? Girl, like, she's gonna choke, okay? It's like she hasn't eaten in days. The guy, whose name is Benny, catches her, but instead of, like, freaking out, he's actually really chill about it. He tries to talk to her, but she doesn't say anything. And he sees her wrist as she's going to try and get more food, and she's got a 011 tattoo on her wrist. This girl looks like she's 8 years old, okay? When he asks for her name, she points to the tattoo and says 11. Okay. And while she's eating, she gets annoyed at like this rattling fan, like over there. And she looks at it and she goes, and then it stops. How did it stop? Now, while this is happening, while this mystery girl is like in the kitchen with Benny and stuff, at the school, Mike, Dustin, and Lucas get pulled out of class by Hopper, and they get asked about Will. They tell Hopper about this shortcut that's called Mirkwood. It's not actually called Mirkwood, that's just what they call it. And that Will takes it all the time. They want to help search for Will, but Hopper says no, okay? And the police, they go to Mirkwood and they actually find Will's bike crashed on the side of the road. We also find out that Will had this little hangout spot in like the woods, like at the back of his house, called Castle Byers, and like him and Jonathan made it a while ago, and it's actually really cute. The police show up to the Byers' house to tell Joyce about how they found Will's bike, okay? And they start looking around. Hopper thinks that Will might have come home last night, okay? Also, this is Hopper. I don't think that's Hopper, okay? I don't think I pointed to him. I love Hopper. I love Hopper. Hopper goes to the shed and he sees a shotgun casing on the ground, which is weird. He then organizes a search party for Will. Mike calls Dustin and Lucas on his walkie-talkie to say, we need to go find Will, okay? I don't care what Hopper says. We need to go find Will! Back to this rhino girl. Benny ended up calling social services. They turn up, but it's actually not social services, and they shoot Benny. And then they try to take 11. Like, there's a lot of people here trying to get 11, but she runs away and escapes in the woods. Joyce gets a phone call at home, and she's just like, hello. She hears breathing, and she's just like, Will? Oh my gosh, that's Will. Like that's Will breathing. But then we hear that noise, that gurgling noise that we heard Will on the phone to, and what he heard before he disappeared. Then the phone gets like electrified, is that a word? And burnt. Also, it's storming again. I forgot to say that. Mike, Dustin, and Lucas are in the woods trying to find Will, but as they try and find him, they find 11 instead. And that's the end of the first episode. Okay, some things from the episode that I didn't mention. We find out that Hopper used to have a daughter named Sarah, but she died. We also get a clip of people from the lab with headphones on, listening to calls that are coming from around Hawkins. Like they're listening in on calls that are happening in Hawkins. Chapter 2, The Weirdo on Maple Street. They bring this girl to Mike's basement and they're all like, what? Who is this girl? They give her dry clothes to change into, and then she tries to change in front of them, but they're like, Lucas and Dustin think that they should tell Mike's mum, but they don't end up doing that because they're worried that they'll get in trouble for being out when they're not meant to. They come up with a plan that in the morning she will sneak out and will knock on Mike's front door so Karen, Mike's mum, will answer and will help. They find out her name's 11 and that she has a tattoo. Lucas keeps calling her a weirdo, which... In the morning, Joyce and Jonathan are talking about the missing posters that they need to print out for Will. Hopper comes around and says that the search party didn't find anything, and Joyce tells him about the phone call, but he is kind of skeptical about it all because there's prank calls, so he thinks it's a prank call. The phone's burned and she only did hear breathing. And she says, what does she say? She says, "You think I don't know my son's breathing? You think you wouldn't know your daughter's?" Oh. Hopper says that he's going to Lorne's and Jonathan wants to go, but Hopper says no. Mike tells Elle about the plan. She says no, and she basically says like, some bad people are after me and they want to kill me. Right. Back to the people in the lab. They show Dr. Brenner Joyce's phone call about the breathing and all that stuff, and then they also show him the phone call that she made to the police about the phone call. At school, Steve Harrington invites Nancy and Barb to his house and says that my parents aren't gonna be there and like we're gonna have a little party, a little get together. We also get introduced to Tommy and Carol. They're Steve's friends, but I use that word very loosely because they're assholes and I do not like them. While they're all talking in a group, they see Jonathan hanging up missing posters for Will on the board of the school. And Tommy says, "How much you want to bet he killed him?" What? In what world is that funny? In what world is that a funny thing to say? Nancy goes up to Jonathan and basically just says, "Oh, like, I'm sorry about everything that's happening. Like, you're in everyone's thoughts." Lucas and Dustin are at school and Mike doesn't show up. So they're just like, the plan obviously didn't work. Like, oh, Mike's a goner. Also, Lucas keeps referring to Elle as the freak. Okay. Back to Jonathan. Jonathan is driving to Lorne's, and while he's driving, the song "Should I Stay or Should I Go" starts playing on the radio. We get a flashback of Jonathan showing Will the song for the very first time. Jonathan arrives at Lorne's. Basically, all you need to know about Lorne is that he is an arsehole and he is not in their lives for a reason. But he doesn't have Will, so... While Joyce is out getting a new phone from the shops, people from the lab in hazmat suits start, like, scanning her place with, like, metal detectors. But they're obviously not metal detectors. They're, like, scanning for something else, but the best I can describe them is, like, metal detectors. Mike and Elle are hanging out in his bedroom, and he's, like, showing her all of his toys and stuff, and then she sees a photo of the call for the party, and she points to Will. And Mike is just like... After school, Lucas and Dustin go to Mike's house and Mike tells them about Elle pointing to Will in the photo. And it's just like, obviously, she knows something about Will. Lucas is Eleven's biggest hater. I don't know why, but he hates this. I mean, like, obviously I know why. Like, everyone is getting distracted by this superpowered girl while their best friend is missing. He goes to open the door to Mike's room to go and tell other people about Elle, but the door slams shut, locks by itself, and she's there with a bloody nose, and she goes, "No." At a search party for Will, Mr. Clark, actually, he finds a hospital band in a tunnel. They follow where this tunnel goes, and it goes to the lab. It is in fact another day. I actually tried to film this video twice and it didn't work twice, so... Back to the party in Mike's basement, the three of them all apologized to Elle about how they acted. especially how Lucas acted. They all start talking about Will and they ask Elle if she knows where he is. She then goes to the D&D board that they were playing with in episode 1 and she flips it so it's upside down and she puts Will's little mini figurine character on it. And she says hiding. Mike asks hiding from who, and then she grabs the Demogorgon figurine and puts it right next to Will's. Nancy and Barb go to Steve's house. They park a bit away from his house on the street. And it's literally just them, Tommy, Carol, and Steve. Like, hanging around by Steve's pool and drinking. Jonathan goes to where they found Will's bike on Mirkwood and he starts going into the woods next to the road and starts taking photos of everything. He then hears a big scream and he follows the scream and it turns out that Steve's house is at... Oh, Steve isn't on the board. It turns out that Steve's house is actually very close to this Mirkwood place. And the scream was just Carol. We can see that Barb is not having a good time, okay? She's pressured into shotgunning a beer, and as she's cutting the beer can open at the bottom, she slips and it cuts her hand and she starts bleeding. She then goes inside to clean up the cut. While this is all happening, Jonathan is actually hiding in the woods taking photos of them all. Nancy, Steve, Tommy and Carol, they all jump in the pool with their clothes on. Could not think of anything worse. Back at the Byers, Joyce is sitting right next to her brand new phone and then she gets a phone call. This time she hears Will say mum. And then the lights start flickering in the house, but they're not flickering in all the house. They're leading towards Will's room. Joyce follows, and as it leads to Will's room, a hand reaches out through the wall. She obviously runs away, but then as she's trying to get into the car, she decides to just go back in. Back at Steve's house, Barb is just like, Nancy, it is time for us to leave. It is, we need to go. We need to go right now. But Nancy wants to stay. She ends up staying. She tells Barb that it's okay, you can go. She literally just tells Barb to leave. Nancy and Steve go up to his room to change into dry clothes, and as Nancy is changing, Jonathan is taking photos of her through the window.
But I think I see something looking at me through that window.
But like, the photos that he takes is like one of her in her work clothes and then one of her in her dry clothes, I guess. It's still really creepy. Nancy and Steve do end up sleeping together. And as they're doing that, Jonathan is preoccupied taking photos, funnily enough, not of them, but of Barb, because she didn't actually leave. She's sitting on the diving board at Steve's pool, just playing with her bandage and her cut, and some of her blood drips into the pool. I don't know what happens, but Jonathan needs to do something with his camera, so he looks down at his camera, fixes it, then when he looks back up, Barb is gone. I also forgot to mention, before Barb disappeared, the lights around the pool started flickering. Which could mean nothing. I completely forgot. We get the first of Elle's flashbacks. It's of her. She's obviously in the lab and she's being dragged by two grown men in a hallway. While she's getting dragged, we see her calling for Dr. Brenner, but she's not calling him Dr. Brenner. She's calling him Papa. And then she gets thrown into a sort of mental psych ward type-esque room. Chapter 3, Holly Jolly. So we see Barb here, and it looks like she's trying to get away from something, like she's being chased in this emptied out pool. As she's climbing up the ladder, she's almost out of the pool, but then something drags her back down. And then that's all we see of Barb. In the morning at the Byers, Jonathan walks in on Joyce talking to Will through the lights, and Jonathan gets really annoyed and pissed at her. Mike, Dustin, Lucas, and Elle are going to try and find Will after school, but they can't take Elle to school, so Mike gives her his watch and says meet them at the power lines at 3:15, okay, 3:15. I think I should probably name Hopper's like little squad. So there's Phil Callahan and Calvin Powell. I think that's how you say his name. I don't really know, but they're normally who like Hopper works with, and they're consistent characters in the story, so I kind of need to introduce them. Hopper, Phil, and Calvin, they get into the lab and they ask for the security camera footage of the night that Will disappeared. They're looking through the tapes and they don't find anything. And as they're getting to the car, Hopper is like, girl, that was not the night of Will's disappearance. Like, it was storming so heavily that night and not a drop of water was seen on those tapes. So the lab is number one suspect to Hopper right now, okay? Number one. Sketchy. Also, we see Joyce hanging up like a lot of lights around the house. Like, a lot of lights. At school, Nancy asks Tommy and Carol if they saw Barb, but they say that she left before them. Nancy even calls Barb's mum and asks if she has seen Barb, but Barb's mum just says, I thought she was staying at yours last night, and Nancy is just like, oh. I would also like to note that I just love Karen, Mike's mum. I love Karen, okay? Her and Holly bring food over to Joyce's house and they just sit down talking in the kitchen, but as they're talking, Holly sees the lights flickering towards Will's room. Obviously, she follows. She's like 3. She goes into Will's room and Joyce is like set up like literally, she's gotten every single light in this house in Will's room. They're all flashing and going off, but then they stop. And then the thing reaches through the wall again. But then it stops as soon as Joyce and Karen bust in. And Joyce is just like, you need to leave. You need to leave right now. So they do. Hopper and the squadron are at the lab, okay? They're looking through all the old articles about the lab in newspapers. The titles of the articles are Alleged Experiments and Abuse, Dr. Martin Brenner named in lawsuit, Terry Ives suing, They Took My Daughter. In the car park of school, Steve and his squadron are surrounding Jonathan's car, including that random girl that walked in on Jonathan, developing the photos. They confront Jonathan, mostly Steve. I'll just say Steve confronts, actually no, it's all of them. They all confront Jonathan about the photos being taken, and in retaliation, Steve smashes Jonathan's camera and also rips up all the photos that he took. Nancy comes in at the end and she's looking at the ripped photos of the ground and she sees one of Barb on the diving board and she takes it. She takes all the pieces. After school, Nancy finds Barb's car parked where they parked it last night. She goes to Steve's house. Steve isn't home, by the way. He's still at the school. She's looking at his backyard and then she hears a noise. She sees like this animal, like she sees like this little glimpse of like this sort of animal type thing. But then it like runs away, like it's really running, like really running. And then she runs away. Back to Joyce and these damn lights. Some of them start flashing and she takes fairy lights and goes into like this sort of like hidden, hollowed out area in the living room. And she asks if Will is there. Mind you, the fairy lights are not plugged in, okay? But they blink. She's just like, oh, let's do this. Blink once for yes and twice for no, okay? Can you do that? Blinks once. She asks, are you alive? Blinks once. Are you safe? Blinks twice. Where are you? Nothing. So she strings up fairy lights on the wall and underneath each fairy light, she writes a number of the alphabet. A number? A letter of the alphabet. With this wall, she asks Will, where are you? And he spells out right here. She asks, how do I find you? What should I do? Then it spells run. Girl. The lights start flashing. The thing comes out of the wall again. And she runs out of the house, meeting Jonathan on the road. Back to Hopper and his squad, they're talking about all the articles, and in one of the articles there's a picture of children at the lab with Dr. Brenner in a hospital gown. Like, oh my gosh, we found a hospital band. What if Will saw something he shouldn't have? But then they get a call in their radio and they race off. While this is happening, Mike, Dustin, Lucas, and Elle are all looking for Will. They're following Elle's directions, by the way, and she leads them to the buyer's house. Like, they're all just like, why are we here? Like, this is Will's house, like, why are we here? He's obviously not here. But she says that Will is hiding. Then they see multiple ambulances and police cars driving on the road like really quickly. So they get on their bikes and they follow them. Then Heroes by David Bowie starts playing. They end up at this lake and they're hiding behind an ambulance and they see 2 people dragging a body from the lake. It's Will, who is clearly not alive. Mike is pissed at 11 and he's just like, you were supposed to help us. You said he was alive. Like, what's wrong with you? What is wrong with you? And then he storms off and rides his bike home. Chapter 4, The Body. The police go to the Byers' house and they tell Joyce and Jonathan about how they found Will's body in the lake, and then Joyce tells them about what happened with the lights, and they're just like, okay. The working theory is that Will crashed his bike and accidentally fell in the quarry and drowned. Joyce says, whoever you found, that's not my boy. I just talked to him like half an hour ago, girl. Like, I was talking to him through the lights. Hopper is like, get some sleep and I'll meet you at the morgue in the morning. Joyce doesn't get sleep and she just sits on the lounge and stares at the wall with an axe in her hand. Back at Mike's house, him and Elle are in the basement. He's pissed and he's just like continuously talking to Elle like, oh, what's wrong with you? Like, you hurt me. Like, friends don't lie. You hurt me. You lied to me. While he's giving this little speech, she's playing with his walkie-talkie, and through the walkie-talkie, we hear Will singing, "Should I stay or should I go?" And her nose starts bleeding. Mike is just like, what? He tries to talk to Will, but it doesn't work. Mike calls Lucas through the walkie-talkie and is just like, girl, bring Dustin here right now. Like, oh, this is important. Will's alive. But Lucas is like, do not piss me off right now, okay? Do not piss me off. But Lucas and Dustin do end up coming to Mike's house. At the morgue, Hopper is there waiting for Joyce and Jonathan to identify the body. As he's in the waiting room, he finds out the normal person that does the autopsies was told by people from the state to leave last night, meaning that he didn't do the autopsy, okay? Somebody from the state did. We see them uncover Will's body and Jonathan throws up and he has to leave. But Joyce is just like, oh, Will has a birthmark on the right of his arm. Can you show it to me? We then see Jonathan and Hopper in the waiting room and they're just talking about everything. They're mainly talking about Joyce. They're talking about the thing with the lights and how Jonathan is worried because Joyce has had anxiety issues majority of her life. Then Joyce comes storming out of the room and says, I don't know what you think that thing is, but that is not my son. Gagged! And she storms out of the whole practice. Jonathan chases her down and is just like, okay, let me get this straight. Will, that's not his body because he's in the lights. And there's a monster in our wall. Do you know how crazy you sound? Joyce is like, I know this sounds crazy, okay? But I talked to him. He's out there and he's alone. And I will not stop looking until he's home. And Jonathan says, okay, so while you're talking to the lights, the rest of us are having a funeral for Will. Guys, I love Jonathan Byers, okay? I just love him. Imagine being like 16, your 11-year-old brother goes missing and you have to plan his funeral alone because your mum is like straight up going through psychosis. Like, what? At school, Nancy tells Steve that she went to his house and what she saw and says that she thinks that there's an animal with no face and that something really bad happened to Barb. And Steve's just like, oh my gosh, my parents are gonna kill me. When you talk to the police, just don't mention the bears. Nancy is like, Barb is missing and you're worried about the bears, and then she storms off. The core three and Elle are in the basement and Elle is trying to get Will back on the walkie-talkie, but all they're hearing is like whimpers. Lucas is like, that's a baby, Will's dead. Dustin thinks that it might be his ghost, but Mike is like, Will is alive. We just need a stronger signal. And then they remember, oh, Mr. Clark has a big radio, okay, that can go to Australia. So they decide to sneak Elle into the school so they can go to Mr. Clark's radio. But Elle doesn't really look like a normal person, so they like kind of dress her up. They give her a wig, they give her a cute little pink dress, little jacket. It's very chic. Lucas and Dustin are like, oh my god, you look so good. Mike calls her pretty and she's just like, what can I say? Back at the lab, everyone is in the hazmat suits, okay? There's a guy on a tether going through like the opening portal that we saw before, and he's attached to a tether. Dr. Brenner's trying to talk to him, but they can't really hear him, but they do hear him say, there's something else in here. So they pull the tether. As they're pulling the tether, they get to the end of it and the guy's not there. The guy's not there. Nancy gets pulled out of class by the police. She tells them everything that happened about Barb and about the car, but they say that the car's gone. So the police think that Barb just ran away. Nancy goes home and in her bedroom, she's looking at the photo that Jonathan took and she sees something behind Barb. So she puts it all together and she sees this. We seeing the same thing here? What the hell is that? At the station, Hopper's talking to the guy that normally does the autopsies, and he's like questioning him about like why didn't you do it? Like, why did people from the state come? He says that like 6 or 7 of these government people stopped by and they claimed jurisdiction before he could even start the autopsy. Back to the core 3, they try to sneak Elle into school, but they get caught and they get dragged into the assembly that the school is holding for Will. In the assembly, those 2 bullies are just like laughing and like making jokes about Will. Time and place. Once the assembly finishes, Mike goes up to Troy, one of the bullies, and is just like, don't laugh. Troy just like continues to call Will gay when he's talking to Mike and like saying like, oh, he's in fairyland now. Go what? Mike ends up pushing him and then Troy is about to fight back, but then he just like stops and then he starts to piss himself. And Elle's just using her powers to do it. While Jonathan is shopping for caskets by himself, mind you, Nancy comes and is just like, Jonathan, I need to talk to you. This is not the time nor place for this to happen. So she shows Jonathan the photo and he's just like, oh, it could be lens flare. It could be lens flare, but he's never seen that happen before. And he also says that it was weird talking about Barb. He said that he looked away for a second and when he looked back, she was just gone. Nancy tells Jonathan about her sneaking into Steve's house and like exploring the wood area a bit. And Jonathan asks what this animal looked like and she says that it had no face. And Jonathan is just like, that sounds really familiar. Hopper is at the bar with the guy that found Will's body and he's like trying to get him to talk without him knowing that Hopper's police. But he's not talking, so obviously Hopper goes into the alleyway with this guy and starts beating the guy up. We find out that this guy told him to call it in and to not let anyone get too close to the body. While Hopper's beating the guy up, we see a car watching them. And as soon as Hopper sees the car drives away. And the guy that is being beat up says, you're gonna get us both killed, and then runs away. What is happening? Back to the core 3 and Elle, they're now at the radio. On the radio, they're hearing bangs, okay? And hear Will saying mum like over and over again. And while they're doing this radio thing, Joyce can actually hear Will like through the walls. So she rips the wallpaper off and she sees this, and we can clearly see like Will's like outline. And Joyce asks, where are you? And he says, it's like home, but really dark and really cold. But then the wall like closes back up and like turns into concrete again. Like we visibly see it turn into concrete again. So she obviously hacks down the wall with her axe, but she literally just made a hole in her wall. Like the thing, this like red sort of window type thing just like isn't there anymore. Like she's just staring into her front yard. Mind you, the core 3 and Elle are hearing all of this, but they're only hearing Will's side of the conversation through the radio. But then the radio just like goes up in flames. Like it's just set on fire. And Ella's like so tired. Like they have to put her on a chair and wheel her out of the school because she can't walk. Jonathan and Nancy are in the dark room getting a close-up of the thing in the photo with Barb. Jonathan is just like, oh, I shouldn't have taken photos of you guys. But Nancy's just like really chill about this whole situation. So I'm just like, what's going on? Like, Nancy, what's going on? Like, obviously she's distracted about Barb, but even if I was in that situation, I think I would still be kind of creeped out about the guy that was taking my photo without my knowledge. The enlarged thing from the photo is this. Also, God forbid you try and watch this show in daylight. God forbid you try and watch this show without being in pitch black. Okay, this show is so hard to see. I just needed to get that off my chest. Okay, I just needed to get that off my chest. Jonathan is now starting to believe his mum, and they're like, oh, like if she's saying that Will's still alive, then that means Barb might still be alive as well. This is like one of my favorite like sequence of scenes throughout the whole of season 1, okay? Hopper is at the morgue and goes to see Will's body. He does have to fight off a few guards, but he does that easy peasy, okay? He's looking at Will's body and he touches it. and it's not cold. So he gets a knife, okay? And he kind of just goes like that against Will's chest. And the body's filled with stuffing. Like that, it's not Will's body. It's like, it's filled with stuffing. Guys, Will's back on the wall. Also, Lorne shows up at the Byers for Will's funeral. I actually can't remember if it's this episode or episode 2, but there are quite a few flashbacks that I need to catch you up on. 3 of Elle's flashbacks, okay? We see her attached to this head thing in sort of this observation room next to Dr. Brenner, and she crushes a Coke can with her mind. Then on another flashback, we see Dr. Brenner trying to get her to a cat with her mind, but she refuses, and then that's why she was getting locked in that that psych ward room sort of thing in the first flashback. Then on the last flashback that we get, she's attached to the head thing again with Dr. Brenner, and he's saying that we need you to find this guy. Just find him in your mind and repeat the words back. And she does, and she goes into this sort of place, and she does do the guy. It's like a test sort of thing that they're doing, and it's just another guy in the lab, and she repeats the words back. So she can do that now. Chapter 5, The Flea and the Acrobat. So Hopper decides to sneak into the lab. He's looking around and he's seeing this sectioned off zone. We know that the people that normally go in that sectioned off zone are always in hazmat suits, but he doesn't. So he goes in. He's trying to get into this doorway, but it's locked. Then guards sort of come. He obviously beats them up because Hopper is a beast, bro, and steals one of the guy's keycards and one of the guy's guns. He gets into the doorway and he shoots the keypad with the gun so nobody can get him. So he's in this place and he goes into one of the rooms and he sees a bed, a teddy bear on the bed, and this picture on the wall. Then we see him go down the elevator that we always see Dr. Brenner going down. Hopper's led to the hallway with the ash in the air. Then he gets to the gateway sort of thing that's in the wall. He touches it, but then he gets tranked, okay, so he can't do anything else. Back to the core 3, they're talking about what Elle is saying, and it's all kind of starting to make sense now. And they're talking about how Will, he said it was home, but it was really dark and really cold. Mike is like, oh my gosh, she literally showed us his house. What if he's in his house, but in a flipped version of his house, okay? The upside down version. Turns out this upside down place is also in D&D, and it's called the Vale of Shadows. It's described as a dark reflection or echo of this world. It is a place with decay and death and monsters. It is right next to you even when you can't see it. They think that Elle can communicate with Will and try and find him by doing this shadow walk, the thing that they do in their D&D games to talk with the Vale of Shadows. Boom. Back at the Byers' house, Jonathan comes home. He tells Lorne also to go home, and then he's starting to talk with Joyce about this upside down monster, but Lorne is just don't feed into your mother's delusions. Turns out he's gonna be staying there for a while. Don't piss me off right now. The next day, everyone is at Will's funeral, and Joyce has a flashback. We find out that Will's character in D&D is called Will the Wise, and we see him drawing in this flashback, and he's a really good drawer. He is an artist. Hopper wakes up in his house, surrounded by alcohol and pills, and he's just how did I get here? He obviously remembers what happened. Then he starts taking down every single light in his house and trashing everything, and he finds a listening device. At the lab in the headphone room, Dr. Brenner is listening to something. He's listening to what Will said on the radio, and he says she was there. Back at the funeral, Jonathan and Nancy are just talking about how they want to hunt this creature, and they've mapped out where this thing has gone, and it turns out that it's a mile from each other. Jonathan wants to go out, and so he steals a gun from his dad's car. These guys from Hawkins Power and Light show up to the school and check out the radio, but they are not slick, okay? We know that they're from the lab, okay? You guys aren't ready for this, okay? At the wake of the funeral, the core three ask Mr. Clark about other dimensions and how they would travel there. He explains it in such a good way, okay? Let me show you. This tightrope represents the human dimension, and this acrobat represents us. And we can only move forward and backward. Now this flea, representing a different creature from a different dimension, can also move side to side. But it can also move underneath. And underneath the rope represents a different dimension. He explains that while humans can't naturally access this other dimension, it would theoretically be possible if a large amount of energy could create a tear or gate in space-time. The core three say, what if this gateway already exists? But Mr. Clark says, I think we would know. It would disrupt gravity, magnetic fields, and our environment. And it might even swallow us up whole. I ate that up, okay? I ate that up. Hopper is still at his house and Officer Powell and Callahan show up and tell him that 2 people went hunting near Mirkwood and didn't show back up. Hopper tells them to leave it and that he'll take care of it. They also tell him that people from the state found Barb's car in a bus station. Lonnie is mending the hole in the wall. He's like talking about getting compensation from the government. It turns out that he's just there for the money and Joyce kicks him out. Back to the core three and Elle, they explain to Elle all the stuff that Mr. Clark said. Dustin then figures out something, okay? He gets all the compasses in Mike's basement and shows them to the group. All the magnets that Dustin have collected aren't pointing north. Now what would be affecting the Earth's magnetic field? Yeah, that's right, the gateway. So Dustin thinks that following these compasses will lead them to the gate. And while he's explaining what he wants to do with these compasses, Elle looks terrified, okay? She looks really scared for some reason. Nancy is swinging a bat, getting ready for this fight with this no-face monster. Steve shows up and he tells her that he's sorry about the whole Barb thing, asks if there is anything he can do. He's just like, oh, let's start over, let's go out tonight. But she says no and she wants to stay home. She's trying to find the creature with Jonathan, remember? Nancy goes to Jonathan and he's practicing his shooting, but he's really bad. He's really bad. Nancy, on the other hand, she's really good. The core three are following the compasses and Mike and Elle are walking together and Dustin and Lucas are walking together. Lucas is just like, isn't Elle acting really, really weird? And then we get an Elle flashback. She's sitting on the bed that Hopper saw in the lab with Dr. Brenner and they're talking about her having to go into this bath. And girl, this is not a bath, okay? This is a tank. And that's the end of the flashback. Elle is telling Mike to turn back because she's too tired, but Mike says no, continues walking, and then we see Elle have a little bit of a nosebleed. Hopper is banging on Joyce's door, okay? And when she answers, he's holding a sign that says, don't say anything. He sweeps all of the lights, which takes forever because remember, she has all the fairy lights. He doesn't find anything, so he tells Joyce about the morgue and about Will's body. The party and Elle arrive at this old junkyard and it turns out that Elle has been messing with the compasses this whole time and has been leading the group the wrong way the whole time. Lucas calls her a traitor, but she says that it's not safe. They're having like this massive fight. Lucas calls Elle a monster. Then they start wrestling and Elle throws Lucas across the junkyard with her powers. We get the continuation of the flashback before. So while in this tank, she goes to like this sort of blacked out space sort of room in her mind. She finds the person that she was meant to find and is like connecting what he's saying in this blacked out room to the radio so that Dr. Brenner and all the other people in the observation room can hear what he's saying. But then she hears the noises, the gurgling that we've been hearing from this creature and she freaks out and that's the end of the flashback. Lucas is rightfully pissed that he got flung across the junkyard. Mike says, "What's wrong with you?" like 10 different times. And Elle runs away and Lucas rides his bike home. Nancy and Jonathan are out on this hunting trip. They're looking around, they hear something and it's a deer, but it's in like really rough shape. Jonathan's about to shoot it to put it out of its misery, but then something drags it away. They try and follow towards where it was dragged to. Nancy then sees this hole in the tree. She looks at it and she's just like, oh, okay, yeah. Let me just climb in it real quick. So she climbs in it. once she's through, she's out of the tree and it closes back up. She's in the place with the same ash stuff and vines all around. Her flashlight is flickering. It's dark and it's slimy, and she sees this creature eating the deer. She's trying to be quiet, but she accidentally treads on a stick and it makes a noise, and this creature just looks towards her. Jonathan hears her screaming and sees where she left her bag, because she took it off when she had to climb through the stupid tree. But he can't find her. Chapter 6, The Monster. Jonathan is screaming for Nancy, and Nancy is screaming for Jonathan, and they can actually hear each other, even though like Nancy is in like what we presume as the upside down. But this creature starts hunting Nancy. Jonathan sees the tree that Nancy had to climb through, and it's kind of like moving and like pulsing, like where she climbed through, and there's like a little glow to it. Nancy ends up finding the tree again and she climbs through it. Jonathan helps her, and as she climbs through it, when she's out, it closes up. And the pulsing and glowing that was there before isn't there anymore. They decide to go to Nancy's house, and Jonathan ends up sleeping over because they are terrified and Nancy doesn't want to be alone right now. Nancy says that she wants to try and find this place again so she can find Will and Barb. And Nancy comes up with this theory, okay? So, Barb was bleeding when she was taken, and the deer was bleeding when that was taken. So Nancy believes that this thing can hunt through the smell of blood. On a side note, we know that it's a Demogorgon, okay? We know that this thing tracks through blood. So that's why I'm kind of confused as to why it took Will. Like, how it took Will. So there's definitely something to think about there. Steve's in the car with Tommy and Carol, and they're driving to Nancy's house. Steve climbs through the window, not through the window, but like to the window, and he sees Jonathan and Nancy like kind of like, I guess you could say cuddled up together on her bed, and he's like super pissed. He's super pissed. So he leaves without saying anything. Hopper's telling Joyce about everything that he saw in the lab. He tells her about the drawing and that Hopper thinks that it may be Will, but Joyce is just like, my son doesn't draw stick figures, okay? So Hopper's just like, oh my gosh, I've not been hunting Will, I've been hunting another kid. Hunting? Hopper and Joyce decide to go to this Terry Ives. Like, they think that she must have something to do with this because she claimed to have her kid taken away from her by the lab. Mike and Dustin are in Mike's basement, and Mike is saying how, like, Elle running away is Lucas's fault. But Dustin is like, girl, I was the only one being reasonable. You pushed him first, so you need to apologize first. They go get Lucas, and then they try and find Eleven, but Lucas is just like, no. We need to forget this weirdo and try and find our friend that's missing. But Mike is just like, forget it. Elle is part of the party now. Lucas is continuously calling her a traitor and says, you can waste your time trying to find this Elle, but I'm gonna go try and find Will. Yes, Lucas. Like, why is Will not the main character when he's the literal main character of this show? Like, finally somebody that's actually trying to do something about Will. I mean, like, yes, Hopper and Joyce, but like in the core four, in the party, finally somebody is trying to do something about Will. Because like Mike's just like completely forgotten about Will. Absolutely not. That is not on. We find out that Elle slept in the woods last night. She had to take her wig off, so the shaved head is in fact back. Elle's at the shop. She steals some Eggos. Everyone's staring at her because like she's alone, she's dirty, and she has a shaved head. Like, that's so strange. Now we get another flashback. Dr. Brenner is telling Elle in the lab that today they'll make history and that today we will make contact. Like, okay, what does that even mean? Okay, like, what does that even mean? At the tank, there's a lot of people watching her, and Dr. Brenner tells her that whatever this thing is, it can't get her. And Dr. Brenner is like, whatever this thing is, it's calling to you. I want you to make contact with it. She goes into the tank, she gets into the shadow walk sort of state. End of flashback. So she's stealing Eggos from the store, and when she leaves the store, people are trying to get her, but she smashes the doors and like, yeah. Then the guy that was trying to get her calls the police. Joyce and Hopper go to this Terry Ives house. Turns out that Terry Ives, she lives with her sister named Becky. Terry is like in this like catatonic sort of state, and she hasn't talked in like 5 years. Joyce is trying to ask her questions about this daughter Jane and like what Terry's relationship with Dr. Brenner was like. But Becky says, you're wasting your time, and we find out what actually happened to Terry. We find out that Terry was a part of this study that started in the 50s. Led by some part of the government. Becky says that the drugs used in this study messed Terry up. Says that the government paid them $200, gave them psychedelics, and put them in these sort of isolation tanks. But at the time, Terry didn't know that she was pregnant. So she was taking all of this stuff while being pregnant, which is a big no. Joyce asked for a picture of Jane, but Becky said that Terry miscarried in the 3rd trimester. Becky shows them this nursery that Terry's kept since she was pregnant and says that Terry's kept this the same since the miscarriage because she thinks that Jane is real and was born with abilities. And that's why Terry says the big bad men took her away. She's a weapon fighting in wars and stuff. Joyce is like, is there any proof of the miscarriage? And Becky says that there was no birth certificate and all the doctors and nurses said that she did miscarry. And Hopper is just like, that could have easily been covered up though. Lucas, on his way out of the house to find the gate, sees those power and light people, but he sees quite a few of them. Mike and Dustin are riding their bike. They see the store that Elle stole from, so they try and follow that way. At the same time, Lucas arrives at the lab because that's where the compass led him. Jonathan and Nancy are like shopping for like stuff and supplies that they can take down this monster with. They're packing up all this stuff in the car and then they see on like the board above the cinema that tells you like what movies are showing, says movie starring Nancy the Slut Wheeler. And can you guess who did that? Yeah, you would be right, Steve, Tommy and Carol. Speaking of Steve and the squad, they're in the alleyway, like laughing and giggling because like, oh my gosh, what we did was so funny. Tommy's like spray painting the alleyway like, oh, Jonathan Byers is a perv, stuff like that. So Nancy slaps Steve in the face, rightfully so, says, what the hell is wrong with you? And he said that he was worried about her and what the hell is wrong with her? Jonathan shows up. Nancy is just like, oh, you saw me and him? That was nothing. Then Steve tells Nancy to go to hell. Then Steve starts coming after Jonathan and then Steve says to Jonathan, you know, I always took you for a queer, but I guess you're just a screw up like your father. You know, I'm not even surprised about what happened to your brother. So Jonathan punches Steve and like, they are brawling. They are literally in a brawl right now. And Jonathan beats Steve's ass, okay? But as they're fighting, an officer pulls up and Jonathan accidentally punches the officer in the face. So he gets arrested. Nancy is so stressed, okay? Poor Nancy. Poor Nancy. Steve and his little gang run away as well. Joyce and Hopper also leave Terry and Becky's place because they get a call that Jonathan was arrested. Elle's eating her Eggos in the woods and she hears Mike and Dustin calling her name. And Mike and Dustin hear somebody coming to them. Tell me why the bullies are here. And tell me why they have a knife. And why are they chasing Mike and Dustin? They end up getting cornered on the edge of a cliff and one of them has Dustin in a chokehold, holding the knife against his throat. And Troy says, you know, I'll only let him go if you jump off the cliff. What is happening? Mike jumps off the cliff. And then Troy has the audacity to look surprised, like he didn't just tell him to do that or he'll kill his friend. This Troy guy is doing way too much, okay? Eleven comes, saves Mike with her powers, then breaks Troy's arm. And the bullies run away. We also get an extension on the flashback. Now she's walking in the shadowed place, okay? She sees the Demogorgon. She doesn't know that it's a Demogorgon, but it's the Demogorgon. And she taps it on the shoulder. But then she's back in the tank and she's like, her nose is all bloody and she's screaming. And there's alarms going off and then the wall splits. End of flashback. We then see her tell Mike that she's the one that opened the gate. She calls herself a monster. Mike is just like, no, you're not a monster. You just saved my life. They all go back to Mike's house and we see the power vans, okay? And the guy in it says, I see them. They're heading home. Then at the lab, multiple gunned up people, including Dr. Brenner, are getting in the vans. But don't you remember where Lucas is? Okay, he sees all of them and he sees all this happening. And he sees like the power and light vans like, oh my gosh, they're from the lab. Oh my gosh, people with guns are getting in them. Chapter 7, the bathtub. So obviously Lucas calls Mike through the radio and it's just like the bad men are coming, like they know where 11 is, the bad men are coming. They get Elle, so Mike, Dustin and Elle are riding their bikes away from Mike's house. And then all the vans start to chase them. There's like 4 vans or something. There's like 5 or 4 vans. While they're riding, they meet up with Lucas and then they like get like cornered. So like vans are coming from here and coming from here and they're here. So Elle is just like, watch this. And then she goes like this. She like flips the van over with her mind and it like goes over them and like crashes into the other ones behind them. They get away and they go to the junkyard. Mike and Lucas also make up and Lucas actually apologized to Elle for like being rude. Joyce and Hopper get to the police station and the officers, Powell and Callahan, are just like, you're gonna want to see what's in that trunk. And they've got all like the bear traps and like the guns and knives and stuff. So Hopper is just like, Jonathan, how about you come into my office, okay? How about you come here? Karen, Mike's mum, also finds out that Elle was staying there. Or like, not like Elle specifically, but she finds out that Mike was hiding a girl in his basement. And then guess who comes knocking on Karen's door? Yep, that's right. The government. They start going through every single thing of Mike's stuff in the basement specifically. And the lady is just like, oh, we think your son is hiding a girl from the government, okay? We think your son is hiding a Russian spy. Karen is just like, what? And then Mike said, yes, Mike does have a dad. His name's Ted. He is so incredibly useless. He's just like, our son with a girl? Dr. Brenner is there, and let me just tell you, I hate this man. He is so manipulative, and he tricks Karen into telling them where they think that Mike would be. Lucas at the junkyard gives the others the whole laydown of what he saw happen. Then a helicopter shows up. So they end up hiding at an old bus in the junkyard. Jonathan and Nancy show Joyce and Hopper like the photo of this faceless creature and like tell them everything. Then Hopper overhears a woman complaining to the other policemen and Hopper goes to investigate. Turns out it's Troy's mum. And Troy tells the police that like this girl broke his arm because she can do things with her mind. Hopper's like,
we fucking got him.
We got him. We got him. So that group, Joyce, Hopper, Jonathan, and Nancy go to the Wheeler's house to try and find Mike. But they see like all these people looking through Mike's stuff, so they decide to not go in. And they end up going to the buyer's house. And they end up finding Will's walkie-talkie so they can talk to the other group. Back to Tommy, Steve, and Carol. Tommy and Carol are like laughing like, Then Steve says like, you're both assholes. Like, I don't want to be friends with you anymore. And then he leaves. So Steve is no longer friends with Tommy and Carol. And then he actually goes to the cinema to help the guy clean off the sign. Which is just like, yeah, okay, thanks for doing the bare minimum. Like, you're actually the one who put that there. Funnily enough, you're actually the one who wrote that out and put that there. The government people arrive at the junkyard. And they're about to find the group, but then Hopper saves the day and he beats them all up. It is kind of confusing. So, here's a little recap, okay? Currently, Mike, Dustin, Lucas, Elle, Joyce, Hopper, Jonathan, and Nancy are together, okay? And they're going to the buyer's house. And they're all the people that know about the Upside Down and about how Will is, like, there. Other than the people from the lab. And you may be wondering, why are the government people trying to hunt these 12-year-olds? They're trying to find Elle because Elle is the product of a very illegal experimentation that they did. So this whole group catches each other up on like their little parts of the story. So Elle tries to make contact through the walkie-talkie to Will and Barb, but she can't because the signal isn't strong enough. The core three kind of explain how she gets more drained the more she uses her powers. But Elle actually says that she can find them, but in the bathtub. So they call Mr. Clark and ask him like, oh, how would one make an isolation tank? And for some reason, the middle school science teacher knows everything about isolation tanks. He tells them you need 1,500 pounds of salt, a kiddie pool, and some water. They actually go to the school because the school keeps a supply of salt on hand if it snows. So Dustin and Lucas are setting up the kiddie pool in the auditorium. Mike and Nancy are getting the hose. Hopper and Jonathan are getting the salt. And Joyce and Elle are getting her ready to do this. So Mike and Nancy basically tell each other that they won't keep secrets from each other anymore. And Hopper promises to Jonathan that he will find Will. And Joyce is helping Elle and tells her that she's very brave and she thanks her for doing all this and says, I'll be with you there the whole time. And if it ever gets scary in this place, you just let me know. I love Joyce! They get everything ready, okay? The walkie is ready to go and everyone else is as well. So she gets in the pool. The lights flicker and they turn off and she's back in this shadow walking place. And she finds Barb dead with a slug crawling out of her mouth. She sees Castle Byers, she goes in, she finds Will, and she tells them that, like, it's gonna be okay, like, we're coming from you, and he says to hurry. Joyce and Hopper decide to go to the lab and sneak in, and they tell Nancy and Jonathan to stay at the school and look after the kids. Obviously, they don't do that. They decide that they want to kill the Demogorgon, so they go to the Byers' house. They get their supplies back from the police station, and they go. Joyce and Hopper go to the lab. They obviously get caught, and they get surrounded by soldiers. Soldiers! Why does the lab have soldiers? We then get a scene of Will. He's in the upside-down version of Castle Byers. We can clearly see that he's cold, like his teeth are chattering, he's laying down, and he's singing, "Should I stay or should I go?" Then we hear the Demogorgon come, and it wrecks Castle Byers, and then we hear Will scream. Chapter 8, the Upside Down. We see that Joyce and Hopper have been put in separate, like, sort of interrogation rooms. They're asking Joyce how she made contact with Will, and Dr. Brenner tries to manipulate her and, like, tries to say, like, "Oh, we don't want this happening to anyone else's kids, like, you need to help us." But Joyce says, "I know who you are. You took my boy, left him to die, faked his death, and now you're asking me for my help? Go to hell." Hopper is in his interrogation room, just like being, like, tasered, and these two people that are hurting him, they're just like, "What do you know?" And Hopper is just like, "Everything. You messed up big time." They put him in a chair and are about to inject him with something, but he's just like, "Here's what's gonna happen. Basically, you're gonna let me and Joyce do whatever we want to find Will, and I'll tell you where the girl is." Oh, I'm gagged. I'm gagged. I'm sat and I'm gagged. So they let him and Joyce go. They get led to the gate, they put on hazmat suits, and they enter the gateway. And we see a whole bunch of police people getting into vans at the front of the lab, and they're just, like, talking, and then Dr. Brenner says they'll never find him, referring to Will. "What do you know, Dr. Brenner?" Nancy and Jonathan are at the Byers' house. They're just sort of, like, setting up traps and, like, pouring gasoline everywhere. Jonathan even puts nails into a wooden bat.
The one with the nails.
And then they both cut their hand. I don't really know why they both cut their hands. But they do anyway, and then the Demogorgon, like, gets, like it, like, smells the blood. Kind of like Scooby-Doo, like, it's kind of giving Scooby-Doo, low-key. The Core 3 and Elle find out that Nancy and Jonathan left. Mike wants to go find Nancy, but Lucas and Dustin are just, like, stick to the plan. And then Lucas and Dustin both go to try and find, like, pudding for Elle, leaving Mike and Elle alone. Nancy and Jonathan bandage up their cuts. They're, like, having a cute little moment. Then Steve comes. He's, like, banging on the door. He's just like, "Jonathan!" Nancy opens the door and is just like, "What do you want? Like, you need to leave ASAP." But he's just like, "No, I need to apologize to you and Jonathan, and I need to do it right now." So he barges in and he smells the gasoline and everything. So he starts freaking out. And then Nancy pulls out a gun and she's just like, "Steve, leave." But then the lights start flashing and the Demogorgon, it comes from the roof this time. So they all run into Jonathan's bedroom. Like, I don't really feel sorry for Steve because he does kind of deserve it, but he is so confused right now. He's just like, dude, imagine you were him. Like, you go to your ex-girlfriend's, possibly new boyfriend's house, and then you barge in saying that you need to apologize, and then you smell gasoline, and you see all these bear traps on the ground, and all these guns and stuff, and then your ex-girlfriend points a gun at you and says you need to leave right now, and then starts counting down, and then a creature comes from the wall, and they start getting chased into Jonathan's bedroom. Like, dude, if I was him, I think I would have died. I think I would have died just from pure anxiety. Then the Demogorgon, it starts like making like really weird noises, and then it just leaves. Joyce and Hopper find this weird egg thing. They find Castle Byers, but it's destroyed. Another Hopper flashback. We see him and his daughter in the hospital, and she's clearly suffering from some type of cancer. I've also never mentioned this, but Hopper actually wears a blue bracelet from his daughter, and we see him like crying and like clutching at the bracelet in the flashback. Back to Nancy, Jonathan, and Steve. They're like cautiously walking to the living room. Steve's freaking out. He tries to call somebody on the phone for help. But Nancy's just like, you need to leave right now because it's gonna come back. So he starts to leave, but as he's leaving, he looks back and he sees all the lights flashing in their house, and then he decides to go back. The Demogorgon shows up again, girl. Nancy's continuously shooting it, but it's not doing anything. Then Steve shows up with a nail bat, okay? And he gets it into the trap, where the bear trap is covered in gasoline, but it disappears. Now, in the Upside Down, Joyce and Hopper can hear this thing screeching. They go to the buyer's house, but in the Upside Down. They're walking through the hallway of the Upside Down buyer's house. But in the normal buyer's house, Steve, Jonathan, and Nancy can see lights flickering and flashing as Joyce and Hopper are walking in the hallway. Like they're going off at the same time where Joyce and Hopper are, I guess. So now it's like confirmed that the Upside Down has like some sort of connection to lights. And I looked it up because I was really confused as to how like this could happen. But on my notes, it says that when electrical devices are used in the real world, they seem to create an electromagnetic response in the Upside Down, causing lights to flicker or brighten. I'm still kind of confused, but okay. Joyce and Hopper see the blood from the Demogorgon and they decide to follow it. Mike and Elle are talking. He asks her to the snowball dance like next year and they end up kissing. Like time and place. You have known each other for like a week and you're 12 years old. Like, don't piss me off. Do not piss me off right now. Then the whole like army shows up, like Loki, like literal army people and soldiers and stuff show up. And they corner Elle, Mike, Dustin, and Lucas in the hallways. But don't worry, okay? Because 11, well, she takes all of them out. I'm gagged. There was like 15 people or something there. Like she has, what is her kill count? She has killed more people than years she's been alive. Now, Elle, this took a lot out of her because remember, she also just did like the isolation tank sort of thing in the kiddie pool. The soldiers, well, the ones that 11 didn't take out, are holding onto the boys. And Dr. Brenner holds onto 11 and is just like, you're sick, like, I can make you better, okay? You're sick. But she just continues to say that he's bad and she calls for Mike. And like, she can't even like move. She can only like mumble words because she's so exhausted from taking out all those people. Also, on the topic of those people, so they're all bleeding, right? Yeah. And remember when I said the Demogorgon hunts through blood? So the Demogorgon comes and kills Dr. Brenner. And these 3 and 11 go into a classroom. I've never been so happy to see a spot empty on this wall. In the Upside Down, Hopper and Joyce are still following the blood and they get led to like this really creepy like sort of thing. They go inside and they see like skeletons there. And the walls are like in like this sort of like goo, like spiderweb sort of deal. They find Barb, dead. And then they find Will. He's like got like this going down his throat. When Hopper pulls the thing out of Will's throat, it like moves. Like like this thing is alive on the ground and Will isn't breathing. The Demogorgon finds Mike, Dustin, Lucas, and Elle because Elle, like her nose is bleeding. I would also like to note that Lucas is trying to take this massive monster that he saw people shooting at and that didn't work down with a slingshot and just a couple rocks. Like this Demogorgon thing then flies like back into the wall and 11 is there. She's like this and then she turns around and she's just like, goodbye, Mike. And her and the Demogorgon turn into dust and they're just gone. Joyce and Hopper resuscitate Will and we also get another flashback of Hopper's daughter. This time it's her in the hospital flatlining. But Will's okay, so that's good. Mike's parents get called to the school. They pick up Mike. Mike's crying because Elle's gone. Then we see Will in a hospital bed. Jonathan and Joyce are by his side and the first thing he does is ask Jonathan if he's okay. Everyone, including Steve, is in the waiting room waiting for an update on Will. The Core 4 are finally reunited, guys. Will's just like, the Demogorgon, it got me. Don't make me cry right now, Will. And they're just like, no, it's okay. And then they all tell him about 11. 1 month later, it's Christmas. The Core 4 are playing D&D in Mike's basement. It's time for them to go, and then we see Jonathan pick up Will. Nancy actually ends up giving Jonathan a brand new camera and kisses him on the cheek. Also, Nancy and Steve are back together. I hate Nancy and Steve together. I'm sorry, but I do. I don't think that they go together at all, and I just don't like them together. Gag it! Jonathan and Nancy for life, okay? Jancy, if you will. We see that they're having a Christmas party at the police station and Hopper leaves early. We see him drive out in the middle of nowhere and put a container of Eggos and food in a box on the ground. Oh, okay. The Byers are having a family dinner at their house. Will goes to the bathroom and throws up a slug. The same type of slug that we saw crawl out of Barb's mouth. And that's the end of season 1. Please like this video, please subscribe to my channel, guys. More videos coming soon, I promise. Season 2 video coming very soon. I promise that. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to do the Stranger Things recap, guys. I'm so excited for season 5. I'm so excited to share my love for Stranger Things with you guys. As I said before, I love movies. I love TV shows. I've actually wanted to be a director for movies for pretty much my whole life. So I guess this is sort of a way to show everyone my passions and share my passions and let everyone know that it's okay to be passionate about silly things like movies and TV shows like Stranger Things. I hope this video made you smile and I hope to see you again. Please like and subscribe. Guys, I need a new camera. This camera only lets me do 30-minute increments, okay? And then the battery dies. I need a new camera. Please subscribe and please like my video. Please. Okay, bye.
Okay, love you guys. Don't forget to smile.